What up, fam? Welcome back to another episode of Reading Between the Headlines. I'm Asaf Nisim. Little Broken Picard is here. Let's do the thing. Headline number 1. Sentimental. Howard Kendall's wife doubts Duncan Ferguson will give former manager's watch back for Man United game after wearing it for Chelsea win. I gotta say, as a Chelsea fan, I did not feel good at all going into this fixture. There's no question that the Everton roster is jam-packed with big names and buckets of quality. Until now, their form has been shockingly disappointing. That said, with the sacking of Marco Silva and the appointment of interim boss / club legend Duncan Ferguson, the parameters for a fierce, ferocious, relentless exhibition in this match were set. It's clear that while Chelsea have perhaps surpassed some low expectations at the start of this season, there's often been a feeling of unease, even when getting the 3 points. I think that Frank Lampard is doing a great job, but as is common with young squads lacking seasoned veterans, there is a lack of consistency, a preponderance of youthful mistakes, and as Frank has made clear, the inability to deal with physical contact enough. Unfortunately for Chelsea fans, these factors were blatantly apparent for all to see at Goodison Park on Saturday. One thing that wasn't so blatantly obvious on Saturday was one of Duncan Ferguson's secret weapons, and possibly the power source of his Evertonian wizardry. Club legend Howard Kendall's watch. Considered by Everton fans to be their greatest ever manager, Howard Kendall guided the Toffees to not one, but two, count them, two league titles, an FA Cup, and the European Cup Winners' Cup. You guys might not have heard that one. It's been a while since it was a thing. Having played under Kendall and later becoming a close friend of his until his death in 2015, Ferguson is still in contact with the late manager's wife, Lily Kendall. She told TalkSport that, quote, "Dunn rang me on Thursday night to tell me he would be in temporary charge, and I was delighted for him. He said he wished his mate was here, and I just asked, 'Do you want to wear his watch?' And he said he'd be made up." It's just a watch Howard used to wear during the day. It wasn't his good watch, but it was a gesture for Duncan to have it, and it seemed to work. I've seen the reaction on social media, and it's really nice that everyone was made up he had a part of Howard with him. This brings us to our Englishman's English lessons for those who aren't English. Bear with me if you are in fact English and don't need this lesson. You can bugger off as well if you're feeling excluded. Mrs. Kendall said that not only was Duncan Ferguson made up about wearing Howard Kendall's watch, but so were many of the Everton faithful on social media. Now, in the United States, being made up usually means, face paint and the intent to wow the plebs, or perhaps questioning the veracity of a friend's excuse for, say, showing up late on game day? Happens often enough when we're waking up at the ass crack of dawn to see you silly nannies across the pond kick a ball around. In England, maybe Northern England in particular, being made up means being delighted or ecstatic about something, as in, I was made up when I bought my first tickets to see Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, or I was hardly made up when I watched Chelsea shit the bed against Everton on Saturday. That brings an end to this edition of Englishman's English Lessons for those who aren't English. As for Ferguson's successful start to his tenure on Merseyside, it doesn't look like Mrs. Kendall will be getting that watch back anytime soon. From this Chelsea fan, well won, gents. I can only hope that your new manager vigor continues against the rest at the top of the table. Headline number 2. Praise. Simon Jordan explains why Leicester City boss Brendan Rodgers has become very Jurgen Klopp-like. We've been talking a lot more about Brendan Rodgers these days for obvious reasons. Leicester are straight killing the game, and Rodgers is appropriately receiving heightened plaudits. There's little doubt that Jurgen Klopp is considered one of the best managers in the world at the moment, and it's pretty common for comparisons to be drawn in this sport. This young star is the next Messi, next Ronaldo, next Ronaldinho, blah, 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 blah. I guess it sells papers and raises interest, so there's that. Here's Simon Jordan doing a bit of that to good effect.
And Leicester are what they are. They're a very good side. I question, what I do like is the fact that Brendan Rodgers is becoming very Klopp-like, because he's getting the squad to be able to play now. Because I've said this to you, and you to me, if they lose Vardy, do they suddenly lose this ability to be quite as offensively minded or quite as potent? Now, the other kid they signed from Man City, Iheanacho, has started to score goals.
And he picked them both today, incidentally, making a point.
But the fact is that he can rotate now, because he's now got players that are in form, and that has to tell you something about managers like Brendan Rodgers and Klopp, that they're now beginning to get a real value of squad players, rather than on a Friday afternoon saying the ones with the bibs know they're playing and the ones without aren't, or the other way around. Ultimately, they're having to manage these players as proper 25-man squads that are being resourced as and when they need them. But I look at Leicester, and I think that they've got everything about right at this moment in time, in terms of the manager has now signed a long-term contract and put to bed that nonsense. And it's great to see the rarity of managers coming out, and rather than sit there saying, I'm the Leicester manager until someone tells me something different, which is tantamount to, well, for better or for comes along, I'm going to be available. Brendan Rodgers, I suspect, with a large financial inducement, has signed to Leicester. They're building a very decent squad there of very, very good players. It'll be interesting to see if they can maintain this as the season gets longer. But there's nothing from what I've seen so far that gives me an indication that Leicester won't be able to maintain this, because they're building and building and building more and more confidence, and even when they're not playing well, they're winning games, which is the blueprint, isn't it?
So I think stamping Klopp's name on the statement is somewhat gimmicky and formulaic, but it sort of highlights the qualities and ingredients that go into making an inspiring, effective manager, right? Principally from a man management standpoint. There's more than one way to skin a cat, for sure, but it seems that more often than not, the most successful managers are the ones that are apt to create a tight-knit family environment at the club. The type of manager who doesn't look awkward kicking their players in the butts as they come on the pitch, imploring them to get out there and eat the opposition alive. John Terry famously said that playing for Mourinho was like war, that he was fully prepared to leave the pitch in a coffin for the gaffer. At the end of the day, football isn't rocket science. Don't get me wrong, it's certainly a game of chess. You don't become consistently successful as a manager if you aren't an astute student of the game. If you aren't able to succinctly convey a message to your players, your staff, others involved in your team's success, you will likely fail repeatedly. I'm sure there are many factors that go into being exceptional at the job. Here, Jordan highlights what many consider to be at the top of the list of prerequisites. Don't take my word for it. Brendan Rodgers, among other iconic managers, have said as much repeatedly.
In this sort of click and ping culture that we've got, though, people are saying that the ability to manage individuals, have empathy, are going to be the key qualities moving forward across the whole of life, let alone football.
Yeah, I think it always has been, but I think even more now so in society. As a coach, I always say that you'll always work as a football manager in an age group of between 16 and 35, and there might be a few that'll go on beyond that. But each year, you move away from that age band. But it's still very important that you can connect with the young guys, but also whilst not making an idiot of yourself.
Naturally, when you're working with humans, this sort of psychological acumen is going to be vital. If you're programming robots to play the game, I suppose it really would all just come down to the bare math of it all, It's fancy to say that Brendan Rodgers is like Klopp in that he's getting the best of his players, squad and starters alike, and it's certainly true for both of them, but it seems to me that these are qualities that can be found across the board in great managers. Many former players of Sir Alex Ferguson, for instance, have said that one of his great abilities was to keep everyone in the squad happy and tirelessly working to gain the favor of the manager. Firstly, it's not going to happen if you're a player who's not getting any minutes despite a team in poor form. So it helps if the team is winning, right? And not just managers. I've also worked as a professional musician here in New York. What I've noticed about many students is that they tend to do even better and work harder when they want to satisfy their mentor. It was true of me. And not only that, they're willing to go through the tedious, annoying, boring exercises. Same with the players. If they know that the team is winning, if they know that they're getting their opportunities from time to time and whatever, maybe this isn't the case with everybody, it certainly isn't the case with every student, but if they know that they're getting somewhere and the team is getting somewhere, they're less likely to question it, less likely to be really upset. When Fergie retired, goalkeeper Fabian Barthez said as much. He said, quote, "He was always, 'How are you? How's your wife, your parents, your children?' He always wants to know how if a player feels good. With him, I discovered a different kind of football." He added that he felt no ill will towards Sir Alex, despite being replaced by Tim Howard in the 02-03 season. He said, "It went really well. He puts you on the bench, but he explains the whys and wherefores. It's all clear. He always protected me." Dani Alves has said that man management was the main factor in Barcelona's success under Guardiola. He said, quote, "Guardiola's man management was key for our success at Barca, not only for me as a person, but for all of us in a collective way. He knew how to treat us as human beings, and that was very important." Unless Jordan was referring to the extraordinary dental makeovers that both managers have undergone, and they were pretty extraordinary, maybe the headline should have read, "Brendan Rodgers, showing all the signs of a manager that knows how to motivate players to win and exhibit mental toughness, like most other perennially successful managers we've seen in the past." Seem pretty good? Maybe it's a little lengthy. It works. I should work for TalkSport. Sign me up, and it's that easy. I got this. Before we get to headline number 3, I'd like to remind you all to please like, comment, share, subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. If not, all of your hopes, dreams, and aspirations will never come to fruition. You will fail miserably. Back to the show. Headline numero 3. Garth Crooks, not to be confused with the famous American country singer, likens Blade's George Baldock to George Best. Speaking of impassioned managers who excel at man management, Chris Wilder's boys have continued their compelling form with another win against floundering Norwich. Right fullback George Baldock, not for the first time, clinched Premier League points for the Blades. He scored a late equalizer at Tottenham back in early November and now secured 3 points for his team at Carrow Road. If you delve even deeper into Baldock's ability to affect play as a defender going forward, you'll find that he's in esteemed company. According to Sheffield United News and stats from Opta, Baldock has been directly involved in 5 goals this season, 2 strikes and 3 assists. That puts him behind only 2 other defenders in the league. I wonder who that could be. That's right. You guessed it. I'm just doing that thing where, you're watching TV and the person asks a question, give a little bit of pause, and they say, "You guessed it," and you're like, "I guess that they're talking to me." Bet you probably guessed it anyway, didn't you? Because you're smart. Smart people. Smarties. You guessed it. You did guess it, didn't you? Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson. Surprise, surprise! Garth Crooks over at BBC has not only named Baldock in his Team of the Week, but when reflecting on the goal said, quote, "I wasn't sure if it was George Baldock or George Best. I thought I was seeing things when I saw Baldock drag the ball back, pirouette, and strike a glorious shot past Tim Krul. The finish, not to mention the skill, was superb, along with Sheffield United's performance." Now, I don't know if I'd go so far as likening the fullback to George Best, but it certainly is sort of commonplace when these types of skills are on exhibition. And, well, it sounds nice when they both have the same name. George Best, George Baldock. I see what you did there. I see what you did, Garth Crooks. Crooks? Not Brooks. Crooks. Best was known for his off-the-field exploits in the finer things in life. He said things like, "I spent a lot of money on booze, birds, and fast cars. The rest I just squandered." And in 1969, I gave up women and alcohol. It was the worst 20 minutes of my life. But he was also known for his ability to split defenders and break ankles like no other. His start and stop juking and hesitations sent players in all directions as he walked the ball into the net. Check out this famous goal he scored for the San Jose Earthquakes in the States way back in the day.
George Best, brilliant midfielder of the San Jose Earthquakes. This goal came against the Fort Lauderdale Strikers, and keep your eye on George Best in the center of your screen as he gets this return pass. This is truly a great, great goal.
Best maneuvering unbelievably. Best still has it. I don't believe this move. He's That's the greatest soccer goal I've ever seen. How? You talk about individual effort. That is the greatest soccer goal I've ever seen, Julie.
It's no surprise that Baldock's goal will have inspired warm commentary and comparisons to George Best. It was definitely a fantastic goal, but how does it measure up with other great goals this week? Let's find out in our newest segment, RBTH, Goal of the Week. RBTH stands for Reading Between the Headlines. In this segment, we're going to be giving each of 3 nominated goals a score equivalent to the sum total of several points of value curated by moi. 100 points for the technique and difficulty of the strike itself, 100 points for the build-up play, including any individual skill, and 100 points for how well the shot was defended. First up is George Baldock's goal. Let's start with the build-up. The ball comes in from the wing. It's not a great ball. It's a little behind him. He reaches for it and misses. Norwich defender gets a touch, but it's too heavy, gives Baldock the opportunity to pick it back up. So he scoops it up, a little bit of a chop with the heel there, fakes the inside pass with a left-footed inside step over, and gets the defender to reach for the block, then turns, leaving the defender wrong-footed and giving him the space for the shot. Pretty sick. I know it's all individual skill here, but we're putting it all together for this part of the score. Let's give that build-up a completely not random, objective score of 87 out of 100. Science, people. So, how good was the defending there? Well, to start, when Mario Vrancic intercepts the poor pass, he could have done better to clear the ball. But we won't count that, as it doesn't really affect Baldock's effort here. Once Baldock gets the ball, Vrancic sticks to him fairly well. He's undone by some individual skill, but Onel Hernandez as well as Ben Godfrey are there to help block the shot. Overall, the defending wasn't resolute or very good, but the defending Baldock had to contend with was decent. Goalkeeper is technically the last defender, and he did get a touch to it, but maybe he could have done a little better to parry it away. So we'll give the defending a 60. As for the strike itself, he does manage to put his laces through it, keep his head down, eye on the ball, and steer it low and hard through traffic across goal. We'll give the strike a 72 out of 100. That brings the total score for George Baldock's goal to a 219 out of a possible 300. Not bad. Next up, we've got a sensational goal from Gabi Jesus. There isn't much of any build-up here. A pass from David Silva. Jesus controls it nicely with his left foot, takes a couple of touches, gets it out from under him, and boom! Jesus did well to control the pass from David Silva on his left and set the shot up for himself almost instantly, giving the defender not much time to react. We'll give him a 55 for it. Onto the defending. You have to say it's pretty poor. There are like 7 defenders and 3 City attackers. Phil Bardsley takes responsibility in the 1v1 as his position would dictate. Drinkwater should be dropping in to mark David Silva's run, and Tarkowski maybe could have done better to shift over sooner to help Bardsley with Jesus. You don't want to leave any defender 1v1 with a player like Jesus. Bad idea. So, while I don't think Bardsley could have done much better, Tarkowski and Drinkwater were way too late to react. 45. The strike itself is beast mode. You don't need me to tell you that. The bend, the placement, forget about it. 91. Bringing Jesus' total score to 191. Honestly, there were so many great goals this week. There were a lot of games this week. It's tough to narrow it down, but for the third and final best goal nomination, we have Anthony Martial's goal in the Manchester Derby. This one was a doozy, folks. Martial starts the sequence with a pass to Daniel James on the right, moves in to show support, gets the ball back, uses his body against Rodri, passes it to James again, makes a good run, aiming to beat Sterling, who does well to keep pace and mark him. But to no avail. Pass comes in, he takes a really good touch to set up the strike. Engage. Near post, past Ederson, who was wrong-footed, expecting Martial to go across goal. So, for the build-up, not only did Martial exhibit exceptional individual skill, but he linked up very well with Daniel James to outwit a swarming City defense and thread the shot through a very narrow angle. 92. The defending here is not awful, in my opinion. You could say maybe Rodri could have done better to not get turned on, but Martial juked him well to the inside and then instantly turned to the outside. At that point, he's just trailing the play, and it's up to Fernandinho to actually pick up James. De Bruyne maybe could have shifted over to help Rodri, but you can see he's concerned about the pass into Fred. Martial actually completely faked out all 3 City midfielders. Maybe Sterling could have tucked in a little to cut out the angle on the shot, but at that point, it's really just splitting hairs maybe. It's probably more of a goalkeeping issue. You don't want to get beat on your near post like that. I imagine Ederson is not happy about it. 61. The strike itself was pretty damn good. Low and hard, placed just inside the post, under pressure. And let's not forget, it was also on his weaker left foot. 86. That brings Martial's goal to a final score of 239 out of a possible 300, making him our scorer of the very first Reading Between the Headlines Goal of the Week. Congrats, Martial. I'm sure you've been waiting for this moment your entire life. I award you no trophy and 0 Champions League football next season. Enjoy. Well, I know this must disappoint you greatly, but that does it for this week's episode of Reading Between the Headlines. Thank you so very much for hanging out with me. Stick around to see a few more of my favorite goals from the Prem this week. Another reminder to please like, comment, share, subscribe to this channel, and as per usual, from myself and from little tiny broken Picard, just look at him. He's so tiny. So broken. We hope that you live football and prosper.